Okay. This is Carlos Arce.
And Esmeralda Arce.
And Sebastian Villareal Jr.
Join us on an adventure and discover my world of creative writing. Today we're going to be reading one of my stories named Harvester. And this is it. All right.
Detective Franklin stood admiring the well-kept garden with its elephant ear plants, surrounded by small ferns, magnolias, and other colorful flowers. The dirt was still damp from being lightly watered, and at each end of the garden were fake stones that served as solar-powered speakers. Smooth jazz spilled out from each speaker, meant to stimulate their growth but also set the mood for tranquility. He walked over to the patio and sat down, waiting for Michelle Croft to bring him tea so they could start their second case interview. There was just something that did not add up about her, and that really bothered him. He did not like it when things did not wrap up neatly. He got his notepad and pen out just as she walked with her tea.
So, if this is where it happened, where is the body, Michelle?
What? Detective Franklin asked. He looked around the patio as if trying to find clues.
Spill it, lady. Just come out with it, will you?
Detective, I'm not gonna make it easy for you.
She gave him a coy smile as she gently handed him a cup of tea. She pulled out a chair and sat down with both legs crossed. Her every move and gesture portrayed her as a woman of class, meant to deceive him and into a false sense of security.
Fine. Let's play it your way, then, shall we?
Detective Franklin squinted his eyes, showing his growing frustration at her games. He bounced his legs up and down quickly, trying to contain the frustration.
We shall. And after all, this is my story to tell.
She sipped on her tea without taking her eyes off of the detective. Detective Franklin pulled out a Zippo lighter and lit her Virginia Slim as she began her story.
Do you know the average weight for an organ transplant, Will?
It's Detective Franklin, Miss Croft.
The detective reminded her.
You will be wise to remember that.
He closed the Zippo with a single flick of his wrist and leaned back into his chair.
Play nice, Will, or else.
She waved her finger at him, laughing softly.
Continue, Michelle.
He clenched his jaw in defiance.
As I was saying, a person can wait 3 to 5 years for an organ, and that is a long wait for someone facing a life or death situation.
What does that have to do with you and the abducted children?
The detective responded as he scribbled into his notepad.
You see, as an abductor of children, I like to think of myself as an entrepreneur or a supplier. I had an officer in the Navy tell me, see a need, fulfill a need.
Will sipped his cup of tea. The hot sun beat down on the patio and garden as he surveyed the garden, despite the scorching heat. The large elephant ear plant seemed healthy compared to others on the neighboring terraces.
So, you are telling me that you are into organ harvesting for the black market?
I am into saving lives for a cost, if you will.
She replied. She puffed on her cigarette and exhaled the smoke lightly towards the detective.
Is that why you needed that child?
Franklin waved off the cigarette smoke from his face.
Oh, for its precious organs. That is disgusting.
That is just a small piece of a big picture.
What do you mean?
A human body has more uses than just its organs.
What?
Science requires more than just organs from human bodies, detective.
You sound like this was not your first time doing this.
First time? No, not at all. Just my first mistake.
She puffed the last of her cigarette and extinguished it by tossing it into the last of her tea. Will stood up, walked to the edge of the concrete, and looked at the garden soil. He noticed something odd blended into it. Multicolored pellets blended into it. At the other end, an opened, medium-sized bag of garden soil was propped up next to the wooden privacy fence. Sweat formed on his receding hairline and dripped down his face. He took his small notepad and fanned himself.
I am sick of this trivia game. If there are more, where are the bodies?
There are no more bodies. At least, not in the way you expect them to be.
What is that supposed to mean?
It means every part of my victims has been used and sold.
Michelle continued. Detective Franklin knelt and cupped a handful of soil to inspect it. He sifted through it, separated the white fragments from the earth, and examined them closely. A sick feeling overcame him, and his head started to spin.
The thought of all this is making me ill.
Oh, Will. It is not the thought of it that is making you ill. It is the real hypnol I slipped into your drink that you're feeling.
My department will come looking for me.
You mean Captain Gonzalez? She's quite good at sending me healthy specimens.
What?
Oh, her and I had quite a great mutually beneficial business venture together.
She watched William as he began losing his balance.
No, that cannot be true. No!
You're gonna help me fulfill many orders with that healthy body of yours.
Michelle watched as he collapsed onto the soil in the garden with the bones of dead children.
Like I was saying, Will, even the bones have their uses and clientele. Take my garden, for instance.
What about the garden?
The soil. The soil is fertilized with the bones of children.
Children? As in plural?
Of course, plural. You're not very imaginative for a decorated detective.
As he lay in the soil, the image of small bones being grinded down filled his mind.
The children!
Will, you found them, and now you can join them.
Michelle laughed as she turned his body over and blew him a kiss.
Congratulations, you solved the case.
That was Harvester. I hope you enjoyed this story that I wrote at the beginning of my journey in Full Sail University.
How did you come up with the concept of the story?
The concept of this story came to me from a picture prompt that our teacher gave us. It was a picture of an empty hotel room with a garden patio, and since I love writing horror, my thinking went to what could possibly have happened in that room. And it dawned on me that a possible crime could have been committed there. And I went with it.
I truly liked the short story because it showed a strong female villain, and she believed in what she was doing was right, even though the law and the cost showed that it was not.
Well, thank you. I want to say thank you to Lala and our Esmeralda Gonzalez and to Sebastian Villareal Jr. For helping me with this. Sebastian, if you want to say something, so thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was a good time reading this little story.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, now you and me. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to follow us on our next adventure in the Cycleverse.